Okay, so this is a good explanation of why you could say the entire world tries to come down on me as far as Western civilization goes. You're talking about rulers, you're talking about social media, you're talking about news, famous people, places like Hollywood. So, what I had realized is that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out in 1937, which was 2 years before World War II had started. It basically was the entire game plan of how World War II was going to play out and was going to end. And so you've got Prince Charming kisses Snow White after she fell asleep from the evil queen. Obviously, we know who the evil queen is. She feeds Snow White, who is the United States, a poison apple. She goes to sleep. The prince kisses him and wakes him up. The kiss was Pearl Harbor, which is why the admiral says, I'm afraid we've awoken a sleeping giant. Snow White was a giant compared to the Seven Dwarfs. The Seven Dwarfs were both the Axis and the Allied powers, which meant that in the end, the elites wanted the seven countries who were mainly involved in the war of World War II to go to the diamond mines, which is where hi ho, it's off to work we go. Those seven dwarves are the seven countries who had participated in the war between the Axis and Allied powers, which is why they turned into like washing machine manufacturers. World War II ended in 1945. It wasn't until 1950 that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released into Japan. Hi ho in Japan means the way. If you look at the Mandalorian, one of the things they say is this is the way. It's another Disney film. You need to understand that Walt Disney was a person who was connected and controlled to the Freemasons. And part of this is a communication system that's built for everyone in the world who is in the know to understand how the world stage is supposed to play out. You look at Shakespeare and he said all the world's a stage and we're merely actors. A lot of people who are in the know recognize that most of the people don't even recognize what's going on. It's all under control. When I say that I wouldn't want to participate in World War III is because I understand that they already have it played out and laid out for the way that they want it to end. The same thing they did in World War II. So hi ho, it's off to work we go in 1950 is precisely telling the Japanese after they lost World War II, which was intentional to begin with, before it ever had started, that they were going to go to work, which is why our military engineers went into Japan and helped rebuild their manufacturing and their society for the 5 years, for 1945 to 1950. They were rebuilding Japan so it could become a manufacturing state. All this has been played out and laid out inside of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So obviously they're going to have the same game plan, right? They're going to have the same game plan. The reason that I figured all this out is because I'm a decoding person. When I was a teenager, I took a military test on the ASVAB. That's the military test for testing your capabilities before you enter the military. And most high schools get this. So most high schools in the United States are going to know precisely what I'm talking about. The ASVAB tests various skills. I got a perfect decoding score. It's decoding and logic. So what I was able to do is I was able to take numbers and the understanding of patterns and codes and be able to transfer that over into the real world. And once I started seeing this, I started recognizing what they were doing on a world stage. I became dangerous to the agenda. Now, World War III is going to be played out precisely the same way. They're going to use movies to describe what they want the end result to be, which is why I will not lift a sword to fight a war that I know has already been laid out and played out in the minds of people who already know how it begins and ends. So it's like going and playing a game when the other person has already decided that you lose or you win. I don't want to play a game where somebody else doesn't even give you a fair chance to make decisions for yourself. That's everything that goes against the United States and everything that we're supposed to believe in being a sovereign individual. So when I tell you that the million Russians who have died in Ukraine over this fight that was already laid out and played out to where it's already known how it's going to end, that's a million people that have died for no fucking reason, in my opinion. I disagree with that. I think it's rotten to do. So World War II was all laid out and played out 2 years before it ever even started in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I can prove to you right now that there's some similarity because that was obviously made by Disney. There's also some English films that were made by Disney that few people know about in the United States. One of them's Bedknobs and Broomsticks. That's got some underlying understanding of similarities of things that have gone on that comes from the UK. Now, when I tell you that you see things like Lord of the Rings, that's a UK book. It came from the United Kingdom. The Lord of the Rings is a variation of parts of how the World War III will be played out. You've got your Lemurians or your Vikings, which are the elves, right? They're long-haired and they're blonde and blue-eyed and they live for a very long time. Those are your Scandinavian countries. That's one family of people who are going to war. Then you've got your dwarves, and then you've got your humans, okay? And then you've got your orcs. Okay, so let's look at the UK. They owned Hong Kong for a long period of time, for hundreds of years. So they kind of had control. It was kind of what you would call a control point. You could call it, part of the brain of a society. And so they had control over Hong Kong for a long period of time. Well, in 1955, they wrote The Silmarillion, which is a book by JR Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings. Well, if you look at one of the Lord of the Rings, the orcs, the Eye of Sauron, and Middle Earth, Magwak is beautiful country, which is the United States in Mandarin Chinese. Zhongguak means middle country, and that's China. So when I say that they wrote Middle Earth as middle country, which is China, and they made them the orcs, and that the Great Eye of Sauron is basically the firewall, the Great Firewall of China on the internet, and they monitor and control the world, you can kind of see exactly how they're using what you would call the Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, the battles that went on in it, as a way to play out what happens and who wins and who loses in World War III. Like I said, I'm not willing to participate in this nonsense because it's going to kill millions of people, and that's what they want. They already have the gameplay planned out in World War III. So when I tell you that the way World War II was played out is all bullshit, and it was intended to be a staged event with lots of people dying at the expense of their families, their children, the lives of people on the ground who just want to live a decent life, go to 9-to-5 work and retire and watch their kids grow up. Yeah, the elites want to throw you into the meat grinder, which is why I saw how World War II was being played out. I won't participate in anything that has to do with World War III, knowing that they already have it played out and laid out, and that they have the intention of killing basically millions of innocent people who don't know what's going on. And that's why basically half the world doesn't like me and is coming at me sideways.